I still remember the sound of the automatic doors sliding shut behind me, that hollow whoosh that feels like goodbye. Charlotte International Airport. A cold Tuesday morning. My son Evan and his wife Bree had insisted I take a little break. They called it respite care. Said it would help me rest, meet other seniors, maybe get professional support. They said all the right words. The kind people use when they've already decided what's best for you. When we pulled up to the terminal, Evan's voice had that salesman calm. "Dad, this place will take great care of you. Just 2 weeks, all right?" Bree smiled. "Too quickly. There'll be a driver waiting at the gate. Mr. Whitaker, everything's arranged." Then she handed me an envelope with $60 inside. "For snacks or whatever you need, Sam." And just like that, they were gone. No hug. No wave through the window. Just the shine of their SUV fading into traffic, while I stood there holding an envelope and a one-way boarding pass with someone else's name scribbled wrong. Sam Whitaker. 2 T's. I waited by the curb. 5 minutes, 10, 15, no driver. When I called Evan, it rang twice, then went to voicemail. I tried Bree, straight to silent. That's when it hit me. This wasn't a trip. It was a drop. They'd left me here, an old man at an airport, because they thought I wouldn't fight back. My name's Samuel Whitaker, 74 years old. Navy corpsman, 3 deployments in Vietnam. I'd been through worse than this, jungle nights, mortar fire, and the silence after both. But this was a different kind of ambush. I opened the envelope again. Inside, next to the $60, was a folded note. Just a scribble in Bree's handwriting, "Stay calm. Dad, this is for your own good." My hand started shaking, not from anger, not from fear, from recognition. I'd seen that tone before in young officers who underestimated experience. The tone that says, "You've had your time. We'll take it from here." They thought I was too medicated, too forgetful, too tired to notice the small things, the missing mail, the whispered arguments about guardianship, the new car in their driveway paid from my joint account. They thought I was broken. They were wrong. I walked toward the bench near baggage claim, sat down, and reached into my wallet. Inside the old leather flap, beneath my VA card and a faded photo of my late wife, Eleanor, was a tiny micro SD card, taped under a yellow note, my own handwriting. "Play me when they cross the line," I smiled. You see, I'd known this day might come. Months of little clues told me what they were planning. And while they thought they were building a case against me, I'd been recording one of my own. Every call, every whisper, every mistake they said I'd made. That micro SD card held 27 recorded conversations, proof, dates, times, their voices. So I sat there at that airport, staring at the departure board, listening to other people being greeted, embraced, welcomed home, and realized this wasn't my ending. This was my opening act, because sometimes the best thing your enemies can do for you is underestimate you. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and tell us where you're listening from. Whether you're in Texas, London, or somewhere quiet like Riverton, I want to know how far stories like mine can travel. Because what happened next wasn't just about revenge. It was about proving that a man can lose everything and still win the war for his dignity. After that morning at the airport, I didn't go inside. I walked out to the taxi stand, sat on a bench, and just let the cold air hit my face. I didn't feel lost. I felt confirmed. Everything I'd been suspecting for months had finally fallen into place. Eleanor used to say, "Sam, when people start speaking to you slower, they've already stopped listening." I hadn't understood that until I moved in with Evan and Bree. It was supposed to be temporary, just until I got back on my feet after Eleanor passed. But grief has a way of dulling your defenses. When your heart's broken, you mistake control for care. At first, it felt nice. Bree made breakfast, Evan handled the bills, and they told the neighbors, "Dad's staying with us while he adjusts." But then, things started changing. Evan began calling me Pop in that tone you use with toddlers. Bree started labeling things in the pantry with big letters, cereal, coffee, tea, like I'd forgotten how to read. Then came the laughter when I asked them to turn down the TV. You can't hear the news anyway, Dad, Evan joked. What difference does it make? One evening, I walked into the living room and found them watching one of those true crime shows about elder fraud. Bree was taking notes. I asked what she was doing and she smiled. Just curious, she said. It's amazing what people can get away with when someone's not all there. The next day, my VA appointment card disappeared. So did my mail. I started noticing envelopes already opened, checks deposited before I'd seen them. My disability payments, my pension, suddenly managed. When I asked about it, Evan sighed like a teacher correcting a stubborn student. Dad, you're better off letting us handle the finances. You mix things up. Mix things up? I'd balanced military budgets before he was born. That's when the humiliation really began. They'd eat dinner at the table and leave my plate covered in foil on the counter. Bree said it was easier that way in case I spilled something. One night I overheard her whisper, "He's getting worse. Maybe we should talk about guardianship." Evan didn't even whisper back. He just said, "Yeah, I'll call the lawyer." That word, guardianship, it hit like a bullet I didn't see coming. Not because I didn't expect betrayal, but because it came from my own blood. I didn't say anything that night. I just went to my room, pulled out my phone, and opened the recorder app. I pressed record and set it by the door. From that day forward, every conversation became evidence. I logged every charge on my account, every insult disguised as concern. The medicine jokes, the times they lost my car keys. The neighbors they quietly told, "Dad's not himself these days." And you know what? They were right about one thing. I wasn't myself anymore. The man they thought they could manage was gone. In his place was someone who had already spent months preparing. I called an old friend from my VFW post, Colonel Jim Calder. He didn't ask questions, just said, "Bring me whatever you've got." That was the night I started scanning bank statements, printing screenshots and backing up the recordings to a drive Evan didn't know existed. When people ask me what betrayal feels like, I tell them it's not fire, it's ice. It's the slow freezing of trust, until every conversation feels staged and every smile looks like a receipt waiting to be signed, but I wasn't going to give them the satisfaction of watching me crumble. They thought they were writing my final chapter, an old veteran fading quietly into managed care. What they didn't realize was that I was already outlining a new story, one where the old man they called confused turned out to be the only one who knew exactly what he was doing, and every lie they told would soon have a date, a time, and a voice attached to it. I started with the small things. When you've spent decades in the Navy, you learn to observe before you act. So while Evan and Bree thought I was napping in my chair, I was watching patterns, what time the mail came, which neighbors they chatted with, how long they spent in the Home Office whispering behind half-closed doors. They were careful at first. Bree only called the lawyer when I was out back feeding the birds. Evan kept his tone polite, but you could feel the impatience under it, like every yes. Dad really meant, "Hurry up and die already." I bought a tiny voice-activated recorder, black, the size of a lighter. I hid it inside a tissue box on the counter. Another one went inside the old lamp in the hallway. I told myself it wasn't spying. It was insurance. The recordings piled up faster than I expected. Bree laughing about my medication schedule. Evan telling a friend on the phone that he'd finally have enough equity to refinance once the old man's paperwork clears. One night, Bree actually practiced signing my name on a pad of paper. "The Y's too sharp," she muttered. I had to grip the armrest of my chair to stop myself from standing up. When I wasn't recording, I was reading. County property laws, guardianship requirements, notary procedures, stuff most people my age don't even think about. I learned that any transfer of property over $50,000 had to be witnessed by two unrelated adults. Bree and Evan had one witness, Bree's cousin. It would never hold up, then I went digital. I created a new email under a fake name and rerouted my bank statements there. That's when I saw it. BMW payments, restaurant bills, designer stores, all under household expenses. My household didn't drive BMWs or eat at steakhouses. I took screenshots of everything, dates, transaction IDs, merchant codes. I stored them on a flash drive and labeled it garden photos. Evan never asked about gardening. He didn't notice the drive sitting in plain sight on the coffee table for weeks. Still, I played the part of the quiet, confused old man. I let them believe the story they were writing about me. When Evan complained that I was getting too forgetful, I nodded. When Bree suggested I start wearing a medical alert bracelet, I smiled and said thank you. Every time they patronized me, they added another minute to the recordings I'd hand to my lawyer later. It's strange. Once you stop trying to convince people you're sane, you see how insane their greed really looks. My friend Jim, Colonel Calder, called one evening after I'd sent him the first batch of files. "You sure you want to go through with this?" he asked. "They're your family." "Family," I said, "stopped being family the day they opened my mail." He didn't argue. Just said, "Then document everything. Don't confront them. Let them walk right into their own trap." So I did. I dated every file, numbered every recording, printed every bank statement. Even recorded myself describing what each piece meant, in case someone ever claimed I didn't understand what I was doing. By the end of 3 months, I had a folder thick enough to stop a bullet, and still I waited. Because patience is what keeps you alive in war. And this was a war, even if nobody heard the shots. When they finally moved from whispering to action, I was ready. I just needed them to take one more step. One mistake, one push too far, and it came on a warm Saturday afternoon, when the neighborhood gathered for a barbecue. That was the day my son decided to put on his best smile, call me Dad in front of everyone, and convince the whole town I was losing my mind, he thought. It would make me look small. He had no idea he was walking straight into my evidence folder. The smell of grilled meat and lighter. Fluid hit before we even reached the backyard. Kids were running around with water guns. Women were laughing near the picnic tables, and every man had a beer in his hand like it was a badge of belonging. Evan led the way, chest out, the devoted son escorting his fragile father. "Dad, remember to take it easy," he said loud enough for everyone to hear. "Too much excitement isn't good for you." I smiled, steady as a parade marcher. "I'll manage, son." Bree was already working the crowd. I could see her near the lemonade stand, phone in hand, camera angled just enough to catch me in the background. She greeted neighbors like a campaign manager. "He's doing so much better now that we're keeping an eye on him," she said, sympathy dripping from every syllable. I took a seat near the fence, out of the crowd but close enough to hear everything. I'd slipped one of my tiny recorders into my shirt pocket before we left the house. The red light blinked once, then went dark. Active. Evan made his way toward a small circle of people near the grill. Mr. Johnson, our neighbor, and Tony Rodriguez, an active duty sergeant who'd moved in down the block. I liked Tony. You could tell he'd seen things. Men like us recognize that look in each other's eyes. "So how's your dad adjusting?" Mr. Johnson asked. Evan sighed in that perfect, heavy-hearted way people do when they want to sound noble. "It's tough," he said. "He's not himself these days. Keeps forgetting things. Gets confused easily." Tony's expression didn't change. He just nodded slowly. "That right, sir?" he asked me. "I remember just fine," I said calmly. "I just don't like noise." Bree appeared with a drink for Evan. "He's having those episodes again," she added softly. "The doctor says it's part of the decline." "The doctor," I said, turning to her, "also says I'm fully capable of managing my own affairs. Did you forget that part?" The conversation froze for half a second. Tony looked between us, sensing the tension. Bree's smile didn't move. "Of course, Sam," she said sweetly. "We're just trying to help." I could feel every eye at the grill turning my way. Pity, confusion, curiosity, exactly what they wanted. Evan clapped me on the shoulder. "Come on, Dad, let's not make a scene." He said it like I'd already done something wrong. That was his trick, build the frame first, then let everyone fill it in. By the time the whispers started, the story was already written. Poor old Sam losing his grip. Son and daughter-in-law doing their best. But what they didn't realize was that while they performed their parts, my recorder was catching every word, every false claim, every careful half-lie, every tone designed to humiliate me in public. Tony moved closer. "You okay, Mr. Whitaker?" "I'm fine, son," I said. "I'd just like to know who's telling my story these days." He studied me for a long second and gave a small nod. "Understood, sir." When the crowd thinned and the music got louder, I saw Bree nudge Evan. "He's slipping," she whispered. "Perfect timing. I didn't react." I just sipped my soda and watched the two of them from the corner of my eye. That night, after we got home, I transferred the recording from my pocket to my laptop. Clear as crystal. Evan's voice, Bree's whisper, the laughter from the crowd. Timestamp, date, witnesses, evidence. It wasn't anger I felt when I listened back. It was confirmation. The kind soldiers feel when reconnaissance matches the map exactly. They thought that barbecue made them look generous. What it really did was give me a room full of witnesses, every one of them hearing how my own son turned my dignity into dinner-table conversation. I closed the laptop, slid the file into my folder, and looked up at the ceiling. They wanted to prove I was incompetent. I was going to prove I was dangerous when cornered. That night I couldn't sleep. Every sound in the house felt too deliberate. The hum of the refrigerator, the soft footsteps upstairs, the faint click of Bree's phone camera through the vent. I sat in the dark, staring at the shadows moving across the wall, and told myself to wait. Just a little longer. The next morning, Evan came downstairs already dressed for work, tie knotted too tight, face red from something more than the coffee. He stood in the kitchen doorway. "Dad, we need to talk." Bree was right behind him, phone in her hand, thumb hovering near the record button. I set my mug down. "Go ahead," Evan sighed. "You're not managing well, Dad. You forget bills, you repeat yourself, you wander off." "I go for walks," I said. He raised his voice. "You get confused, okay? It's not safe. Bree and I have been talking to someone about setting up a legal guardianship. Just temporary. To make sure things are handled right." Bree smiled like this was all kindness. "You won't have to worry about anything, Sam. We'll take care of the hard stuff." I leaned back, studying them. "And my house? Is that part of the hard stuff?" Evan hesitated, then said, "It'll be in our names, yes. Only for paperwork reasons. To streamline the process." The phrase, "streamline the process," that's what soldiers used when they meant, "You won't survive this mission." I nodded slowly. "So this is what it's about." "It's not about money," Evan snapped. "It's about responsibility. You need structure." I stood up, careful not to shake, though my hands wanted to. "Structure? You mean control?" He looked away. Bree spoke softly, almost pitying. "We're trying to protect you, Sam." I met her eyes. "Then why are you recording me right now?" She froze. Her thumb slipped on the screen, the phone screen flashing for a second before she locked it. Evan's jaw tightened. "Dad, we're just documenting things in case..." "In case what?" I said. "In case you need evidence I'm not who I've been for 74 years. Nobody answered. I walked over to the counter, opened my pill organizer, and took my medication, like nothing had happened. The little click of the compartments was the only sound in the room. Evan broke the silence. "We have an appointment Thursday at 2 with the lawyer. Don't make this harder than it has to be." Then they left. The moment I heard the door shut, I reached into my shirt pocket. The recorder had been running since he said, "We need to talk." Every word, clear as day. I took it to my room, connected it to my laptop, labeled the file Guardianship Talk, 02.11/2024, kitchen. Then I opened my drawer and pulled out the steel lockbox Eleanor had given me on our 40th anniversary. Inside were the pieces of my defense, my pension statements, my VA evaluation from Dr. Porter, the original deed to the house, every recording backed up twice. I sat there looking at it all, the paperweight of my entire life, and whispered to Eleanor's picture on the nightstand. "They think this is war." I picked up the phone and called Jim. "Colonel," I said. "They've made their move." His voice was steady. "All right, Sam, then it's time we make ours. Bring me everything in the morning." I hung up, feeling that old calm wash over me. The same one I used to get before deployment. Not anger, not fear, just focus. I knew Thursday would come fast. 2 days. 2 days to prepare. 2 days to turn every insult, every false smile, every dollar they stole into evidence. They thought the appointment would be my surrender. It was going to be the start of their downfall. Thursday morning came gray and cold, the kind of sky That looks like brushed metal before rain. I was awake at 5, same as always. Habit from the service. Your body keeps time long after the world stops caring what hour it is. I shaved, polished my shoes, put on the same blue jacket Eleanor had bought me the year we paid off the house. Then I opened the lockbox one last time and checked everything. Pension statements, check. VA evaluation from Dr. Porter, check. The original deed with my signature and hers, check. The voice recorder, charged and ready. At 8 sharp, I walked the 6 blocks to the VFW hall where Jim kept his office. The coffee there always smelled burned, but it was warm, and that morning it felt like armor. Jim looked up from his desk when I came in. "Morning, sailor." "Morning, Colonel." I set the lockbox down and opened it. His eyes scanned each paper like a man assembling a rifle he already knew by heart. "They've been moving fast," I said. "Appointments at 2, then we'll move faster." He tapped the top sheet. "This deed, this pension, your doctor's letter, that's your spine. Everything else is nerves and muscle. We'll file a declaration of capacity and an affidavit of ownership before they even leave that lawyer's parking lot." I handed him my flash drive. Recordings, bank statements, texts. 3 months' worth. He plugged it into his computer, brows tightening as he listened to Evan's voice through his headphones. "Jesus," he muttered. "You got them cold." "Never doubted it," I said quietly. He removed the headphones and leaned back. "Sam, you sure you want to do this publicly?" "We can handle it through court filings, no drama. I thought about that." "I really did." Then I shook my head. "No, they've been building their story in public, neighbors, friends, everyone. I want the truth out there too." Jim smiled slightly. "Then I might have an idea." He pulled out a folder marked Founders' Day Committee. "The town's looking for a grand marshal for the parade next month. They want a decorated veteran, local, good reputation. You fit that better than anyone. Jim, I don't do crowds." He held up a hand. "Hear me out. That parade isn't just marching bands and politicians. It's 800 people, cameras, local press. You take that stage, tell your story with evidence, and we serve them right there. No shouting, no threats. Just the truth under the sun." I looked at him, unsure if I should laugh. "You're serious. Dead serious." The thought of standing up in front of all those faces made my stomach tighten, but then I remembered the barbecue, the way Evan had smiled while calling me confused. I remembered Bree's whisper, perfect timing. I nodded slowly. "All right. Let's do it," Jim grinned. "Good. I'll get the paperwork started. You just keep acting normal. Let them think they're winning." When I left the office, the wind had picked up. I walked past the coffee shop where Evan bought his expensive lattes, past the bank where my pension account sat untouched, and back home. Evan was waiting in the living room, tie loose, fake smile ready. "Hey, Dad, ready for the meeting?" I hung my jacket on the chair. "I'm ready." He looked relieved, mistaking my calm for surrender. "Good, Bree's already in the car." I followed him outside, locking the door behind me. The lock clicked louder than usual. As we drove, he talked about how the lawyer was experienced with family transitions. I just nodded, eyes on the road. My mind was on the flash drive in Jim's office, the stamped affidavit waiting at the courthouse, and the parade committee that would soon put my name on their banner. By the time we reached the lawyer's building, the plan was already in motion. They thought they were taking everything from me that day. They had no idea I was about to take everything back. The lawyer's office smelled like polished wood and old coffee. I remember that smell because it reminded me of waiting rooms before deployments. Quiet, heavy, filled with people pretending they weren't scared. Bree went in first. Phone tucked halfway into her purse, camera probably rolling. Evan followed with a folder under his arm and that confident smile he used when he was about to sell someone something. I took a slow breath and stepped in behind them. The lawyer, a man in his 50s with wire-rimmed glasses, stood to shake my hand. "Mr. Whitaker, good to meet you. Please have a seat. Your son tells me you've been having a few challenges managing things on your own." I sat down carefully. "That's interesting," I said. "What kind of challenges did my son mention?" Evan cut in quickly. "Just normal aging stuff, Dad. You forget bills, get overwhelmed, nothing to be embarrassed about." I kept my eyes on the lawyer. "And that means what exactly?" He cleared his throat. We're simply discussing options for temporary guardianship. A way for your family to ensure your finances and medical needs are properly handled. I nodded slowly. Pretending to study the papers, he slid across the table. May I? Of course. The pages were warm from the printer, not from any notary's seal. Only one witness line, already filled. Bree's cousin, the same one who'd filmed the barbecue. At the bottom, the notary stamp looked too fresh, too clean, and the name misspelled, Samantha Whitaker. They hadn't even gotten my name right. Bree spoke softly. We can sign right now, Sam. It's just a formality. I looked up at her, calm, almost kind. Then you won't mind if I take this home to review first? Evan's smile slipped. Dad, there's no need. The lawyer's here, everything's ready. Don't make this complicated. Complicated? I said, no, son. Complicated is being told you're loved while your bank account empties one meal at a time. The lawyer shifted in his chair. Mr. Whitaker, if you're uncomfortable, I'm not uncomfortable, I said, standing slowly. I'm informed. I reached into my jacket pocket, pulled out a folded sheet of paper and placed it on the desk. It was stamped and signed by Colonel James Calder, attorney at law. Affidavit of ownership and competency, filed 9:03 a.m., Riverton County Courthouse. Evan's eyes widened. What is this? Paperwork, I said. You like paperwork, right? The lawyer adjusted his glasses, reading. His face went pale. This is already filed? I nodded. With the county recorder and the VA legal department. There's also a temporary injunction against any property transfer until further notice. Bree opened her mouth, then closed it. Evan's jaw flexed, no words left. I turned toward the door. I'll let you two finish your consultation. I have other appointments today. The lawyer cleared his throat. Mr. Whitaker, if I may, your affidavit lists Colonel Calder as your representative. That's right. Any future legal matters go through him. Outside, the air felt lighter. I could almost hear Eleanor's voice in the wind, calm and steady. One move at a time, Sam. By the time we reached the car, Evan was red-faced. You went behind our backs? No, I said, opening the door. I went behind your lies, Bree whispered. We were just trying to help. Help yourselves, I said quietly. Don't worry. You'll have plenty of time to explain that to the judge. Neither of them spoke on the drive home. The silence was thick, brittle. When we pulled into the driveway, Evan turned off the engine, but didn't move. You really think anyone's going to believe you? I looked at him steady. They won't have to. I brought proof. I got out, closed the car door gently and went inside. In my room, I locked the door, sat at the desk, and wrote down the time, 2:47 p.m. Then the note, guardianship attempt recorded. Affidavit filed. The war had officially begun, and just like in every war I'd ever survived, I knew what came next wasn't the fighting, it was waiting. Waiting for the enemy to realize the ground beneath them had already shifted. 2 days later, the whole neighborhood was buzzing about the Founders' Day parade. It happened every year. Marching bands, veterans in uniform, local officials waving like celebrities. I'd avoided it since Eleanor passed, but this year would be different. Jim had already filed my nomination, and by Sunday afternoon it was official. Samuel Whitaker, Grand Marshal. When he told me over the phone, I actually laughed. Grand Marshal. You're kidding. Nope, he said. The committee voted unanimous. 3 tours in Vietnam, Bronze Star, community volunteer. They'd be fools to pick anyone else. I haven't stood in front of a crowd since Eleanor's funeral. Jim, I know, he said, his voice softer now. But this isn't about speeches. It's about truth. And you've already done the hard part. The next morning I opened the local paper. There it was, my name, my picture from the VFW hall, medals shining in the old photo. The parade date circled in red, 2 weeks away. And I knew Evan read it too, because 30 minutes later he came storming into the kitchen, newspaper in hand. Dad, what the hell is this? What's it look like? It looks like you're parading around town like some hero while we're trying to handle your affairs. I set my coffee cup down. I earned those medals, son. I can walk down a street if I want to. You're embarrassing yourself, he said. People already think you're slipping. This isn't helping. Bree appeared in the doorway, hair perfect, expression measured. We're not trying to stop you, Sam. Just maybe keep it simple. A short thank you speech. Short, I repeated. Sure, short sounds good. What neither of them noticed was the small recorder sitting under the newspaper on the table. I'd started keeping one near me at all times now. Paranoia, they'd call it. I called it protection. That night, I couldn't sleep again. I stood by the window looking out at the quiet street, the flags already hung on lampposts for the parade. Across the road, Tony Rodriguez's porch light was still on. The young sergeant was sitting outside with a beer, scrolling through his phone. I decided to walk over. He looked up when he saw me. Evening, sir. Evening, Tony, you still up? He nodded. Couldn't sleep, you? Same. I hesitated, then said, You were at the barbecue the other week. You heard some of what my son said? He nodded slowly. Yes, sir. I did. Did it sound true to you? He took a long drink before answering. No, sir. It didn't. It sounded rehearsed. I smiled. Good. Then I'm not the only one who thought so. He frowned. Something going on? I met his eyes. Let's just say, if I ask you to be somewhere on parade day, would you come? He didn't even blink. Yes, sir. Marines look out for Marines. Then I'll see you there. The night breeze carried the faint sound of crickets and a flag tapping against its pole. It was one of those quiet moments when you feel everything line up, the plan, the people, the timing. Back inside, I pulled out my notes and started assembling the final pieces. Evidence in order. Recordings marked. Copies of every document printed and sealed. Jim had already filed for a temporary injunction preventing any property transfer until further review, but the public part, that was up to me. As the days passed, I watched Evan and Bree grow restless. Their whispers behind closed doors grew shorter, sharper. The calls to the lawyer stopped. They didn't know what to do next, and that silence was louder than any argument. On the morning of the parade, I polished my shoes, pressed my old dress blues, and pinned my medals one by one. My hands were steady, no tremor, no hesitation. Evan knocked softly on my door. Dad, you ready? I opened it. Always. He looked me over and smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. You look great. We're proud of you. I nodded. I'm sure you are. As we walked to the car, Bree held her phone like always, pretending to take photos. Maybe she really believed she was documenting an old man's final proud moment. What she didn't know was that it would be the day everything they'd built, every lie, every performance, collapsed right in front of the whole town. I'd spent months collecting evidence. Now it was time to show it. The morning of the parade was clear and sharp, the kind of air that makes every sound carry. You could hear the brass of the high school band tuning a block away, kids laughing, the low thump of drums warming up. I buttoned my jacket, checked the medals one more time, and caught my reflection in the window. For the first time in years, I saw the man Eleanor used to see, a man who still had fight left in him. Evan drove, his BMW freshly washed, the smell of new leather trying to cover the tension inside. Bree sat in the passenger seat, camera already recording. Pretending to capture family memories, I just watched the town roll by, storefronts with flags, neighbors setting up chairs, the street lined with red, white, and blue. All those people, all those eyes. At City Hall, the staging area was crowded. Veterans in uniform, local officials shaking hands, TV cameras adjusting their lenses. Jim was waiting near the lead car, his posture straight, his expression unreadable. Morning, Sam, he said, crisp as always. You ready? I nodded. Been ready for a long time. He gave me a firm pat on the shoulder. Then let's make this count. Evan came up behind me, grinning for the cameras. Colonel Calder, good to see you. Thanks for doing this for my dad. Jim turned, looked him square in the eye. Your father earned this himself. We're just here to honor him. Evan's grin faltered for half a second before he caught himself. Of course. The parade marshal waved us forward. The convertible waiting at the front gleamed in the sun, red paint, white interior, top down. Jim leaned in. You'll ride up front. I'll be at the reviewing stand when you speak. Copy that, I said automatically. Old habits. As the car rolled forward, the crowd clapped, the band struck up a march, and I lifted my hand in a slow salute. Every face blurred into a wall of color and sound, people smiling, kids waving flags, camera flashes like lightning in daylight. I smiled back, steady, calm. I wasn't here for applause. I was here for clarity. When we reached the reviewing stand, the car stopped. Jim stepped to the microphone, voice carrying through the speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our Grand Marshal, Navy Corpsman Samuel Whitaker, 3 tours in Vietnam, Bronze Star, lifelong Riverton resident." The crowd cheered. Evan stood in the front row, arm around Bree, both smiling like they owned the moment. They didn't realize it was already slipping away. Jim handed me the microphone. "Sam, would you like to say a few words?" I took it, my fingers wrapping around the cold metal, and let the crowd quiet down before I spoke. "Thank you," I said. "I appreciate this honor. For 50 years, I've carried these medals not for glory, but for what they remind me of. The men who didn't come home, the ones who never got to say goodbye." A few people nodded. I could see tears in the eyes of some of the older vets. I paused, let the silence sit just long enough, then continued. "Lately, though, some people have been telling a different story about me. They've said I'm confused, that I'm losing my mind, that I can't be trusted with my own life." The murmurs started immediately. I saw Evan's smile vanish. Bree's phone lowered. I looked right at them. They said it with kindness, of course. That's how manipulation always works. Soft words, gentle tones. While your world gets smaller, one decision at a time. Jim didn't move, just stood behind me, hands clasped. The entire street had gone quiet. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out a small manila envelope. "Inside this envelope," I said, "are copies of my bank statements, recordings of conversations, and a letter from my doctor at the VA, each one proving I'm of sound mind and body. What they also show," I said, holding it higher, "is how my own son and his wife tried to take everything I earned. My home, my savings, my dignity." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Evan shouted, "Dad, stop! You're not well?" But his voice cracked on the last word. I turned the microphone toward him. "Not well. Then explain this." I handed the envelope to Jim, who opened it and read the first line of the affidavit into the mic. "Filed with Riverton County. Affidavit of ownership and competency, signed by Dr. Elaine Porter, dated 2 weeks ago." Evan tried to step forward, but Tony Rodriguez was already there, blocking his path with a firm hand on his shoulder. "Let him finish, sir," Tony said quietly. I faced the crowd again. "I spent my life serving this country. I don't need sympathy. I need the truth. And today, you're all going to hear it." I clicked the small recorder in my pocket, and Evan's own voice filled the speakers, clear and cruel. "Once we get the guardianship, Dad won't even have access to his mail. We'll refinance the house. Maybe we can finally get that pool." The sound hit harder than any gunfire I'd heard in war. The crowd gasped. The mayor's jaw dropped, and Bree's hands trembled as her phone fell from her grip. Evan's face turned pale. I shut the recorder off and let the silence do the rest. "People think war only happens overseas," I said softly. "But sometimes it happens at your own kitchen table." I handed the microphone back to Jim. "I'm done." He nodded, his voice steady as he faced the crowd. "Effective immediately," he announced. "By court order filed this morning. Evan and Bree Whitaker are prohibited from managing or accessing any of Samuel Whitaker's financial or personal assets, pending investigation." The applause started slow, hesitant, then built into a roar. Some people stood, some just shook their heads. But everyone was watching the same thing. My son standing in a sea of faces, stripped of his script, his performance undone. Tony came over, saluted. "You need a ride home, sir?" I smiled. "Yeah, I think I'm done riding in convertibles." As we walked away, the band started again, trying to fill the silence Evan left behind. I didn't look back. I didn't have to, because that was the day I stopped being their story and became my own again. By the next morning, the whole town had seen the video. Someone from the local news station had uploaded it before the parade was even over. The headline read, "Veteran exposes family fraud during Founders' Day ceremony." I didn't watch it right away. I sat on the porch instead, coffee in hand, listening to the soft hum of morning traffic and the faint sound of lawn sprinklers clicking in rhythm. The kind of sound that tells you the world still goes on, even after everything changes. At 9 sharp, Jim pulled up in his old Ford, files stacked in the passenger seat. He got out grinning. "You're a local legend now, Sam." "Not what I was aiming for," I said, taking the folder from him. He followed me inside, placed his hat on the table, and started sorting papers. "The injunction's been expanded. You've got full control of your assets again. And the bank already flagged the fraudulent transactions. They'll take time, but you'll get most of it back." I nodded slowly. "What about Evan and Bree?" Jim leaned against the counter. "They packed up last night. Left town before sunrise. Sheriff served the restraining order just after they pulled out." I stared at the window, at the empty driveway where their SUV used to park. "You think they'll fight it?" "Not with the evidence we've got. The DA's office is reviewing everything. Financial abuse, forged documents, even the recordings. They'll offer them a deal if they cooperate." I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. "Then it's over. Mostly," he said. "But endings are messy, Sam. This one's going to ripple for a while." He was right. That afternoon, Mrs. Johnson from across the street knocked on my door. She brought a casserole and tears. "We didn't know, Sam," she said. "We thought they were helping you." I smiled gently. "That's what they wanted everyone to think." She put a hand on my shoulder. "You didn't deserve that." "None of us do," I said. "But it happens more than people think." By sunset, there were messages on my phone from veterans across town, some I hadn't seen in years. They all said the same thing: "Proud of you." Needed to see that. Over the next few weeks, the rest settled like dust after a long storm. The bank reversed nearly $50,000 in unauthorized charges. Evan lost his job at the insurance firm, company policy after the fraud report. Bree's social media accounts went quiet. Nobody saw them at the grocery store or the gym. They'd vanished into whatever small space guilt allows, but I didn't celebrate. I fixed the porch light, mowed the lawn, paid my bills, small acts of normalcy that felt like rebuilding. One morning, a letter arrived from the district court. Case resolved. Restitution to be paid in full within 12 months. Supervised community service approved. I read it twice, then folded it neatly and placed it in the lockbox. Not for revenge, for record. A week later, Tony Rodriguez stopped by with his daughter Emma. She ran up the walkway holding a hand-drawn card, crayons, crooked letters, bright red hearts. "Happy birthday, Mr. Sam," she said. I blinked. "Birthday?" "I didn't even realize," Tony smiled. "We figured you might forget. Thought you could use some company." They stayed for dinner. Jim came too. We ate simple food, laughed about old service stories, and when Emma asked about the medals on the wall, I told her each one was for someone who never got to come home. After they left, I stood in the quiet house looking at the framed medals. For years, they'd just been symbols of who I used to be. But now, they meant something else entirely. Proof that survival isn't just about coming back, it's about standing up again when no one expects you to. Later that night, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I answered, and Evan's voice came through, small, hollow. "Dad, I just wanted to say I'm sorry. I didn't say anything." The silence must have stretched, because he started again. "We messed up. I messed up. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't know who I am anymore." I took a slow breath. "That's something you'll have to figure out, son. I know. I just hope someday you'll talk to me again." "Maybe," I said. "But not today." We hung up. I stood there for a long time, staring at the quiet phone, the old house around me, the faint hum of the refrigerator. Then I smiled, just a little. Not out of joy but peace, because for the first time in years, everything in that house, every wall, every photo, every inch, belonged to me again. The war was over, and I'd won it the only way a man my age still can, by refusing to surrender. Even after everything, the house feels the same. The floorboards still creak near the hallway, the kitchen clock still ticks half a second too slow, and Eleanor's photo still hangs by the door where she left it. But the quiet's different now. It isn't heavy anymore. It's honest. Every morning I brew 1 cup of coffee, open the front door and let the light in. The world smells like grass and peace again. I keep the porch swept, the flag clean, and a small note taped near the coffee pot that says, "Start with gratitude." Eleanor used to say that. She was right. The town still talks sometimes. When I walk to the post office, people wave. A few stop to shake my hand. They always say the same thing. "You did the right thing, Sam." I just smile and tell them I didn't do anything special. I just told the truth. The Veterans Hall asked me to help set up a new outreach group for seniors, people who think they're being taken advantage of but don't know where to start. I said yes. Now once a week I sit at a long wooden table with a stack of forms, a thermos of coffee, and a sign that says, "Ask Sam." They come in one by one, quiet voices, trembling hands, and I help them file paperwork, call their banks, talk to lawyers. Funny thing about justice, it doesn't feel like victory. It feels like maintenance. Keeping the truth in good condition so it can keep standing when someone else needs to lean on it. A few weeks ago, I got another message from Evan. Just a short one. "I'm working, paying everything back. I'm sober." I stared at it for a while, then typed a reply. "Good, keep going." That was enough. Later that night I sat on the porch again, the street quiet, the stars out. I thought about all the noise it took to get here, the shouting, the pretending, the proof, and how peace never announces itself. It just shows up one morning and waits for you to notice. I took a sip of coffee, leaned back in the chair, and looked toward the empty driveway. Maybe someday he'd pull in again. Maybe not. Either way, I'd be ready, because I learned something through all this. You can't stop people from betraying you, but you can refuse to let them define you. They called me confused. They called me weak. But I'm still here, still standing, still mine, and that after everything is enough.